We've been on one hell of a journey with TB over the last 20 years, really.
I mean, year on year, from last year to this year, we've seen a over 20% reduction in new herd breakdowns.
20%?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you look just over the border in Wales, we are absolutely on our knees. You know, we're losing so many cattle, mental health within the industry.
Yeah.
It's got to be at its lowest ebb ever. And people are struggling because we're looking for solutions. And I think that's why we've travelled here. We want to know your story. We want to know how you got to where you are now, because I'm sure it wasn't easy.
And it's been down to individuals putting the effort in. I think that gets missed quite a lot. You know, government put out the policy that we could do intensive calls with badgers, but it was the farmers that got together, organised the groups, set up the companies, did all the admin, and persuaded other farmers to put the money in to join the group, which wasn't easy.
No.
And it's been farmer-led, and it has been really, really successful.
The call started in 2020, so we were still shut up when the call started, but then we went clear in 2021, and touch wood, we've been clear ever since.
So that was that quick.
Yeah.
So I am a big believer it's all the tools in the box, and TB is a cattle-to-cattle disease, just like Johne's infection. They're very really similar family of bacteria. So I think what's happened in Derbyshire is we went on to 6 monthly cattle skin testing in 2018. So again, 2 years before we started reducing the badger density. We also had a lot of gamma testing. So these guys did lose a lot of cows, but they were the ones that were infected. So we tackled it in Justine's herd.
Yeah.
But then we started to reduce the risk of it coming back in again. So I think we did a double whammy here in Derbyshire. And that's why we've seen the reductions we've seen. I mean, year on year, from last year to this year, we've seen a over 20% reduction in new herd breakdowns.
20%?
Yeah. Because we've done both. You know, we're tackling it in cattle herds and we've reduced the badger density.
So all the tools in the box, you've got them?
Yeah.
We've got half the tools?
Yeah.
You know, that's the frustrating thing in Wales.
For getting rid of it without all the tools.
And we know that, you know, even if we had the opportunity within a few areas where we could reduce the numbers to see, you know, what you've done here, how it works in Wales, at least there would be some light for us. Anybody with an ounce of common sense would understand that what's happened here is a massive positive. And I don't just believe that for the farming families, it's for the wildlife as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure you'll have more hedgehogs back and ground nesting birds and bumblebee. All these things are so important for our countryside, wildlife, farming, communities, families. Everything is dependent on one policy.
But the mental health impacts, actually not having TB and being able to be positive and proactive. And we know physical health and safety on farms is massively linked to mental health on farms. And it's just, it's not almost about having happy, healthy cows and badgers. It's about having happy, healthy farmers as well, isn't it? To me, it's understanding why we control TB in the first place. So it isn't an animal health and welfare disease, which a lot of notifiable diseases are.
Yeah.
It's zoonotic, which means it's a public health risk. So up until COVID, TB was the biggest infectious disease killer in the world in humans. And at the turn of our sort of, probably just over 100 years ago, it was one of the biggest infectious disease killers in England, Scotland and Wales.
Yeah.
So we had a successful test and cull policy in the cattle, pasteurisation of milk because it passes through raw milk, and a human vaccination was successful. So it isn't necessarily a public health issue. I would argue the testing and culling of the cattle that we do is holding it at bay, so it doesn't spill over into the human population. So I think we've got to remember that. That's why we've got the laws that we have around controlling TB. The other big thing is we control TB to have access to international trade. So all of our trade agreements, we have to show other countries that we are managing this disease. And there's certain rules within WOA, the World Organization of Animal Health, that sets out how you should do that. But there are individual countries can do things slightly differently. So we do have laws around the way we control TB. There's no getting away from that. I think as farmers and vets, we've got to trust that process a little bit. The skin test has been around for donkey's years. It's the same test we've been using because actually it's really, really specific. And that means we have absolute confidence that when we find a reactor, we are 99.98% certain it's infected with TB. Doesn't tell us how diseased it is, which is why sometimes when cattle go for slaughter, they have no visible lesions. And actually, I would argue that most cattle that do go for slaughter with as a TB skin test reactor probably do have tiny lesions. They're just not visible at the process. So we do have to trust the skin test. The downside of the skin test is its sensitivity, which is the opposite of specificity. And we miss a lot of infected animals. So animals that should test positive test negative. And that's where we do need to look at cattle herds and use things like the gamma test to go in and clear it out of the cattle. However, that's very painful when you know potentially there's a reservoir of disease in another population that can be bringing that infection back in. And I always say, you know, if you imagine if TB wasn't TB and we called it disease X, and you set out where this infection was coming from, what are the different routes, how would you manage it? And if it wasn't that, well, so in New Zealand, the wildlife reservoir was the possum, which is akin to rats in England and Wales. So people weren't overly concerned about reducing the possum population. In England, we might not hopefully ever have to go back to what we did here in Derbyshire and what a huge parts of England has done, because if we bank the benefits and get it out of the cattle herds by using more sensitive testing, have the ability, if small areas do get infection back into the wildlife population, to be able to do it, we shouldn't need to do the level of culling that we've done so far.
Is the testing regime here in England, is that quite brutal as well? So is every badger that's disposed of, is that tested or?
No, so the idea isn't about taking out infected animals, it's reducing the density.
Okay.
And I think through COVID, we now all understand R0. So it's the number that the disease has to be below, so it's not spreading. So as long as we've got the badger density to a level, even if you've got an infected badger in that population, it's not spreading it widely.
Yeah.
So that's the idea, is that.
So the reduction in numbers is done scientifically, really, isn't it? So you know, if you were going to one farm and just, you know, reducing all the numbers, getting rid of them badgers, that wouldn't help at all.
No, and that's not what the culls were about. There were, within the licensing, each area was given a maximum and minimum number that was statistically significant to reduce the density in that area. So it's not about reducing badgers to nothing. And I haven't met a farmer yet that wants that.
No.
I think that's a really important thing to highlight. We're not wanting to extinct the badger population. They just need controlling because they've got no other predator other than us. So we just need to reduce them. We're not at all wanting to wipe them out. And the numbers that you could see in Derbyshire, you know, they've only taken out a certain percentage of the badgers, but it's worked. That's not wiping every badger out. You know, I saw one yesterday.
Yeah.
You know,
they're
still around. There just isn't millions of them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really key thing to remember. And I don't really understand why that isn't put across more, that we're not trying to extinct badgers. We're just trying to control them in a healthy amount, the same as everything else is controlled by nature.
Yeah.
It's just, they just need controlling.
And they are a protected species, but not because they were rare.
No.
It was to stop badger baiting with dogs, which I think we can all agree isn't very pleasant. Yeah. And it was to protect their habitat. And but within that, there is provision to reduce density for disease control purposes. So, you know, the cull licenses are English policy, and there is provision to reduce badgers to control disease within those acts. Graphs that are publicly available, we are on, in this area, I think the lowest level of TB for over 20 years. And we've killed in England for the first time in 15 years less than 20,000 cattle because of TB. We are absolutely on a downward trajectory. And actually 2038, being officially TB free in England, people kind of joked and laughed at it when it was first announced, but the line, if it carries on the way it's going, won't be far off 2038. Wow. We just need in England the ability to keep those tools on the table as well.
Yeah. We've got to get this message across to the general public as well, because you cannot carry on as we are, because we're seeing, you know, the benefits of what you've done here. And you know what, you're right, it's not about taking them badgers out, it's about getting that healthy population in both sets and getting everybody living in harmony in the countryside, and it can be done. But we need to get the general public to understand how important it is.
Everything else, isn't it? What farmers do is we keep the wildlife and the animals and the farms running as one. That's what we do. We spend every day in the countryside. But they're the one thing that we're not allowed to do anything about, and they're the one thing that's causing us all of this pain and heartbreak and trouble and costing us all this money and costing everybody just their general well-being.
What I've tried to do on social media and is highlight the human element of it, because it is really hard. You know, I do speak 2, 3, 4 times a week to farmers that I've never met before over the telephone who are in tears, and I get quite emotional about it because I can't help them. All I can do is reassure them, you know, the test is doing this, and the human side of it. I mean, I have had farmers seeing in-calf gamma test reactors shot on farm because of transport rules, they can't go to slaughter, tell me I just want to turn the shotgun on myself. You know, and that's really hard, really hard. I've done the mental health first aid training to be able to deal with that. You know, I'm a scientist, I'm someone that gives practical advice on how to manage things, and yet I've turned into someone that counsels people. And I think the more that you guys can tell the public how much it really hurts is really, really powerful.